Modern fighter jets are a staple of a country's armed force. So trying to answer which Multirole fighter jet is the best buy is an alluring idea. Which is the cheapest? Which can best evade enemy defenses? Which can shoot down most enemy planes? Which can have the greatest reach and carry the most useful and or lethal payload? Those are all just some of the questions that will get thrown into the great stew of variables used in this two-part thought experiment piece. Economics and the final conclusion will be given in a week in part 2. Quantifying the plane's capabilities will be presented right here in this video, so stay tuned. Just decades ago, multirole planes were almost unheard of. In World War II, planes were specialized. When I play Call of War, a game sponsoring this video, I use attack bombers to support my conquests. I've been playing this game as Italy. My invasion of Yugoslavia is going molto bene. Call of War is a World War II grand strategy game where you pick a match on a map of Europe, the US or the whole world, then you pick a real country to lead, and then you basically duke it out against other real players playing other countries. It's free to play, but I prefer the premium account. I get 25 days of a playing experience better suited to my work schedule for just a few bucks. So try it out, and know that if you click my link below the video, your new account will get a month of premium and 13,000 gold. Back to our video. Answering the question from the title is not easy. Actually, to be honest and spoil the ending, there is no one answer to it. Different analysis will inevitably lead to different conclusions. Most countries, most of the time, do not buy jets based on cost efficiency. Politics has a very large say in it. Also, not all countries have the same needs. To simplify everything, we will take the needs of a generic medium-sized country with a budget to operate tens to 100 combat jets. Then take a bunch of the most important plane characteristics and try to quantify those. Best buy is defined as finding that sweet spot between not paying much and getting as much as possible for said money. That does not mean that paying zero for paper planes wins the game. Paper planes will not help you win the war. But quantifying what will help win the war is hard, as you will see in this video. Furthermore, costs are rarely clearly outlined, and even when they are available for one jet, they're not directly comparable to cost definitions made public for another jet. So yeah, there are going to be a lot of approximations, and even outright guesswork based on rumors for certain jets that lack transparent figures. Anyway, what are the most important characteristics in a modern multirole fighter jet? Cost is definitely the big factor, but so is effectiveness. Different analysis will quantify differently, but here's what we suggest. Most countries will put a greater focus on air superiority. Some may consider ground strike missions as more important. A smaller subset of countries will have a need for anti-shipping missions. Strike missions will often, but not always, depend on fighter escorts, trying to establish at least a temporary and area-limited air superiority. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery famously said, "If we lose the war in the air, we lose the war, and we'll lose it quickly." This analysis will try to use a weight system of points, though a slightly greater weight will be given to air combat. Crucially, the system used is just one of many possible ways to look at the issue. Anyone can take raw figures we offer in this video and plug them in their own value systems, getting different outcomes. Small countries usually have a greater need to defend their airspace. Their ground strike missions usually don't involve strikes deep behind enemy lines, so their anti-air defense needs are lower. They also can't afford many dedicated recon platforms, so their recon requirement is greater. Regional powers operating well over 100 planes will often need robust anti-air defense and ground strike capabilities. While recon is a hugely important piece of a war puzzle, without which most ground strikes are pointless, today it is expected that most recon and intelligence gathering is performed by other specialized platforms. Even not-so-rich countries today operate elite planes, have access to recon satellites, and one can't really expect a multirole jet to be performing all those missions as well. Thus, the recon value in our multirole plane will be fairly modest. Our generic medium-sized country will be able to afford some dedicated recon platforms, access to recon satellites, more drones, and so on. They will also sometimes invest in air-launched cruise missiles and may also try their hand at deeper ground strike missions. So which planes will we consider in this video? While there are a bunch of candidates, we have to keep it manageable. So it will be only planes that are still in production, that can use both beyond visual range missiles and at least one type of guided bomb, that have entered service with one Air Force, and that have achieved at least one export contract. Yes, that means F-22, J-20 and Su-57 will not be considered in this video. Su-57 was rumored to have been purchased by Algeria all the way back in 2019, but nothing seems to have materialized so far. So here's a list of planes that will be considered. From the US, the F-35A, the Super Hornet, the F-15EX as a representative of the advanced Eagle family, and the F-16V. From Europe, GRIPEN-E, Rafale and Eurofighter, as well as the Russian Su-35 and Su-30 SM-2. All the planes will be considered in their most advanced but currently available variants. MiG-29 doesn't seem to be enjoying a future anymore, but we'll throw that in nevertheless, in its so-called MiG-35 variant. Finally, Asia is represented by the Chinese J-10C and JF-17 planes. We'll even throw in the South Korean FA-50, even though technically it still lacks beyond visual range missiles. So what makes a plane effective at air superiority missions? It has to have missiles. The more advanced, the better. Today, visual range fights will be fairly rare, so short-range missiles don't score as much. Gun is a cute addition, but also a luxury, and scores quite low as it's almost never used. Out of the mentioned planes, the US planes come with the tried and tested AMRAAM-D model, which is fairly new and still potent. It features a two-way data link. Gripen and Eurofighter come with the capability to use both AMRAAMs and Meteor missile, in theory providing an even more versatile punch. The Rafale is the odd one out, as even its F4 variant may still not have the two-way data link capability, so the missile can send it data. While that may impede Meteor's capability, and while Rafale doesn't have the AMRAAM option, it does come with the French-made Mika missiles, which offer a very maneuverable, slightly shorter ranged option, both with active radar and infrared sensor guidance, for added versatility. Russian jets come with the export variant of the R-77-1, which is not quite as good as the latest AMRAAMs, but is roughly analogous to Auty's AMRAAMs. The Su-35 can also launch the very long-range R-37 missile, which is offered for export as well, named RVV-MD. To date, however, no other Su-35 users seems to have procured the said missile. Chinese PL-12 is roughly similar to mid-capability AMRAAMs, though PL-15 scores at least as high as the latest AMRAAM. Korean FA-50 is yet to receive AMRAAM integration, but we include it here to show just how much a plane without a BVR missile suffers in the air combat segment. When it comes to within visual range missiles, the list features roughly similar missiles for the most, with Sidewinder X, Iris-T, ASRAAM and PL-10 being in the top tier. The infrared Mika suffers slightly at short ranges as it was optimized for medium ranges. Its imaging seeker is also a bit older than the latest one on Sidewinder and PL-10. The Russian RVV-MD based on R-74 missile is still lacking an imaging infrared seeker, placing it in a lower tier. Sidewinder M would be the least capable of them all. Of course, air superiority is based on much more than just missile types. Even missile numbers can be secondary there, though there are visible differences in that regard too. Here maximum numbers in typical missions are shown, not theoretical maximums. But what really enables using weapons to their maximal potential are two things: being able to target enemies, either using own sensors or data links, being fed data from third-party sensors, and being able to approach the enemy from a favorable position without being shot down and ideally targeted at all. The latter ability is hugely helped by radar stealth, and there only one plane on the list has a huge advantage, the F-35, with several more planes having some sort of lowered radar signature, but nowhere near the F-35, especially when they are carrying weapons. Keep in mind, just because several planes are in the same performance bracket here, it does not mean they all have the same radar return. The list is simplified for brevity. To get to a favorable position, acceleration, speed and altitude envelopes also help. Here the list would look something like this, though stealth often trumps the kinematic envelope advantage by quite a margin. While a lot of weight on the kinematic envelope list goes to thrust to weight ratio, there are other modifiers as well, like estimated drag, inlet design limits and lift created, which can all further limit flight ceiling, acceleration or top speed. List also assumes planes loaded for air-to-air missions, which is why the F-35 didn't really score worse than F-16, for example. Maneuverability, defined as turning quickly or even just directing the fighter's nose quickly, is generally not as important today, as close-distance fights are not going to happen often. Though again, there is some benefit to that too, both for offense and defense, like evading missiles. As one can see, planes with less stable designs and vectored thrust perform a bit better there, with planes excelling in subsonic turns not necessarily performing as well in supersonic turns. Today, supersonic maneuverability is more important than subsonic one. Sensor package is crucial, of course. Advanced capable radars often come out on top. Size matters too, so sometimes even a bit older radars with large arrays can still hold their own. Optical and thermal sensors are also becoming more and more important. MiG-35, JF-17 Block II and FA-50 score particularly poorly as they're still saddled with slotted planar arrays coupled with not-so-advanced back-end hardware. The MiG doesn't seem as it will ever get the AESA array, and the JF-17 Block III doesn't seem to be used anywhere outside Pakistan yet. More modern radars also help planes perform air-to-ground missions, being able to track ground targets and even create high-resolution synthetic radar images, so radars will be part of the air-to-ground score as well. Curiously, the Rafale still lacks the important ground-moving target indicator mode, so it scores a bit worse in air-to-ground missions. Another item applicable to all mission types are defensive system aids. Those can be anything from old-fashioned flare and chaff decoys, jamming decoys, missile approach sensors, to onboard integrated jammers. General technology level of the plane sensors classifying and pinpointing radio frequency threats is also important. Finally, another piece of the puzzle that impacts all mission types is range. Long range can allow escort fighters to accompany strike planes on all sorts of missions. It can allow afterburner-supported interceptions to significant ranges, or it can enable fighters to stay on patrol in the air for a long time, and to participate in prolonged air battles and pursuits. Mind you, the list shows ferry range. Actual combat radius is often a third of the shown figure, but in some cases it can be even less. If the plane can't rely on stealth, it will in some dangerous missions have to rely on roundabout routes, or fly low, which will impact its combat radius greatly, resulting in combat radius that is often just a quarter of ferry range, or worse, and that's just for air-to-air loadouts. When it comes to air-to-ground loadouts, combat radius may fall further. Hauling around tons of bombs impacts cruise altitude and adds drag. Also, larger planes will handle larger bomb loads more easily. An F-16 can in theory carry 4 large bombs, but doing so would make its range drop drastically, not just due to drag, but also due to losing hardpoints meant for fuel drop tanks. The F-15, on the other hand, could carry the same 4 bombs without its range being greatly impacted. Here are some of the typical loadouts which pertain to laser-guided bomb usage. So some planes waste their centerlines on targeting pods. Lower tonnage values represent the case of typical estimates of max combat radius being maintained. Higher values represent cases where central fuel drop tanks are sacrificed, unless the plane can use conformal fuel tanks. Certain planes from the list have access to special weapons, like long-range cruise missiles or anti-ship missiles, or small-form guided weapons, which increase their versatility. Some planes have such capabilities being integrated but have not yet declared operational capability using those, like the F-35. Recon can be an important mission of a multirole plane. especially if the user country doesn't have access to third-party information, as various drones are not always able to fly uncontested over enemy airspace. While targeting pods can in a pinch offer some recon data, in reality much larger recon pods are used, which allow for coverage of much wider swaths of land at higher resolution. Users of Russian planes have rarely been seen with even targeting pods. A light recon pod for F-35 is under development, but not yet used by anyone. Of course, planes' own built-in sensors, like radars, are often used for recon purposes as well nowadays. Finally, what's important for hunting down enemy SAM systems? Advanced sensors capable of geolocating enemy radar emissions. Weapons that will either home in on those emissions or will be able to recognize the target and pursue it even if the emissions stop. Very low radar visibility is a must, of course, as are various defensive needs. And the plane's own radar and optical sensors can help as well, looking for targets when those are completely silent. Plane's range and time on station is always a factor. While in theory HARM missiles can be mated to any plane and retain at least some effectiveness, when individual countries procure weapons for their planes, it will usually be weapons certified by the plane manufacturer. Of course, capabilities are just one side of the equation. How much does a plane cost is another. Economics of a plane can be just as important as its brute efficiency. But that and the final conclusion will be given out in our next video, to come out in just a week. So stay tuned. Our video is over, but my Call of War match is just beginning. Hopefully I'll get to take a large chunk of Europe before someone stops me. It won't be quick, but that's the point. The game is real-time, but also methodical. I personally like to play for 10 minutes before work, give out orders, manage my provinces and conspire against enemies with my allies. Units can take hours to reach their destination, so then I play 10 more minutes after work, hopeful my defense is held, and then 10 more minutes before going to bed. There are quicker game modes too, but I like this one. Call of War is easy to learn, as its huge research trees and production management are straightforward, but it's not easy to master, with managing armies, their ideal compositions, maneuver choices and decisions of which territories to take and which enemies to fight. But the satisfaction of leading a country to victory, that can't be beat. Try the game for free by visiting my link below the video. You'll get 13,000 gold and a month of a premium account. And remember, Binkov may talk about war, but only real peace can bring us all together.